Yo, Dan,
Yes, Natalie.
I have 2 words for you.
2 words?
2 awesome words.
Pepperoni pizza.
No, Dan, it's not lunchtime yet.
Then I'm at a loss.
I'll give you a hint. The first word rhymes with schmepisode, and the second word rhymes with zoo. Episode 2.
Episode 2?
Episode 2.
Already?
Yep, and I have 2 even better words for you.
It's hard to believe that's possible.
Well, it is, so get excited.
Go for it.
Emily Swallow.
Emily Swallow?
Emily Swallow.
The actor?
Yeah. Our guest today is the beautiful and brilliant actor from kick-ass shows like Supernatural, The Mentalist, and How to Get Away with Murder.
Great shows, and I hear that Emily is quite the thespian as well.
Oh, she is, Dan. She starred on stage numerous times and is currently appearing in a Los Angeles production of Henry IV opposite the great Tom Hanks.
So she's a star.
I'd say so.
In today's episode, we discuss Emily's background and training, the development of her career, and her thoughts on what it takes to succeed as an artist.
It's going to be a fun episode.
Then let's get it started. I'm Daniel Patinkin.
And I'm Natalie Mitchell.
And this is episode 2 of MAR Vista.
So we are here with Emily Swallow, a stage and film actress and television as well. She's from The Mentalist, Supernatural. She's also was on a show called Monday Mornings where she played a doctor. And she's played many Lisas, we've discovered.
Oh.
Lots of characters named Lisa.
Interesting tidbit.
We did our research.
My manager's name is Lisa.
Whoa.
Coincidence?
Yeah, right.
That's strange.
Not.
She just goes through a stack of
Yeah.
potential auditions. Nope. Here
She's
we
like,
go.
these are the only roles that are available.
Sorry.
Lisa. So I guess we want to talk about how it all started for you. I know you didn't go out into the world as a child actor. You know, you went to college and studied actually Middle Eastern studies, correct?
Yes.
So how did you go from Middle Eastern studies to acting?
What do you mean? What's the question? Let's see. I grew up in North Florida, where my whole family still is, and there's no one in my family that's in the arts, but my parents love the arts, and they both are musicians in their own right. So my way into performing was music and like doing church cantatas and stuff. And so then I started doing musicals in middle school and high school and community theater. And I loved it, but it just wasn't modeled for me, I guess, as like, this is a career option. And I was interested in lots of other things, and I was really into foreign affairs and political science. And so when I went to University of Virginia, I was gonna major in foreign affairs, but then I wanted a more specific cultural focus, and the Middle East seemed like maybe there were a few things happening there. It wasn't really that terribly like complex a decision. I was just really interested, and so yeah, that became my focus in undergrad. But I sort of divided my time between my major and being super involved in the drama department, which was wonderfully accessible even if you weren't a major, and that was nice. So there were a lot of people who didn't major in drama but were heavily involved, and I thought that made it really interesting too, to have people that were focused on all these other majors bringing their experience. And I just had this fantastic acting teacher who I still talk to, Richard Warner. I still will email with him, and we'll go back and forth about characters and stuff, and he gives me great ideas. And great exercises to try. He saw how much I loved it, and he encouraged me to pursue a graduate degree or going to a conservatory. So he helped me work up my monologues for my auditions, and I didn't really know what I was getting into in terms of the competitiveness of the process, and I think that's great, because I think I would have been way more intimidated. And NYU took me, and I felt like I should walk through the door, and haven't looked back.
So you went straight from undergrad to graduate school.
I did, yes.
That's intense.
So
Yeah.
did you think, before going to grad school, did you think, I'm good, I'm going to make this happen? Or, because I always wonder how people succeed. That's like a mystery to me.
It still is.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, it's a mystery for everyone.
Being
you know?
naive, I
And
think, like you mentioned, you didn't know how competitive it was, and
Yeah.
you
Right.
just did something you loved.
I think, not overthinking it. I mean, I think, like, I did work my buns off on those grad school auditions. I was definitely prepared, but then it was, it's luck. And I don't mean that in any dismissive way, but there are so many talented, hardworking people. And as you know, like, even if you've worked really hard on something, the inspiration may or may not come in that moment. So I had worked really hard. The inspiration came at the right time for the right people, and then it got tough, because then because I'd always been very much an overachiever, and like, my brother he's 7 years older than me, and he's super, super charismatic and an athlete. And so growing up, I was like, okay, how can I distinguish myself in a different way? And so I was like super studious and got straight A's, and like, there was a system to that. Like, I put in this effort and then I will get this result. And I went into grad school with that same mentality, and that didn't last long.
No.
They were like, whoa, 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 whoa. No. They were like, you're going to be really boring as an actor, and you're going to be miserable if you keep trying to get things right. And that is like the best advice I've ever gotten for being a human being, for my acting, for anything. And I'm grateful for that. So it was a lot of wonderful serendipity getting me into NYU, and then I saw how challenging the rest of it is.
How have you been able to be so successful being completely uncharismatic?
I mean,
I had to learn that.
That was a good one. This is our sidekick. We haven't introduced him yet, actually.
Ryan Doolittle is here. Ryan
Yeah, I didn't even know I was
Hi.
supposed to be talking. Now I can look at you.
I noticed
just
you weren't looking
ignore
at me.
him.
That's fine. Most people don't.
You guys, next time he makes a comment, just ignore it. Everyone, Ryan's
that come from? What?
a writer and comedian for people listening, and he's sitting in this week as our sidekick. We decided as part of the podcast we're going to have a sidekick every week who's going to chime in as
But
a...
we don't introduce him.
we don't introduce them until they make themselves known.
Well, really, does he deserve introduction until he says something
With that
clever?
kind of comment,
That's
I
a
mean,
good
just
point.
Yeah.
humiliated our guest. I have a question. So, when you went to NYU, and we're spending a lot of time on NYU, and we should say that Natalie went to NYU as
Yeah.
well.
I did.
Same
yes.
program,
That's true.
MFA, Tisch.
We've mastered the fine arts now.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Were you planning on screening television and film, or were you thinking stage?
No, I loved theater. The whole the film and TV thing was sort of a mystery to me. I mean, to me, at first, having to I'm very loud, and I have trouble sitting still, and so the way my brain computed, like, having to confine oneself for camera, I didn't understand how anyone could do that and be authentic. And I love the process of theater so much. I love being in a rehearsal process. I love the subtlety with which you can discover things, and that you get to discover things more as a community. And you get that to an extent with film and TV, especially if you've been on a TV show for an extended period. You get a lot of that nuance. But I find that with when I've done television work, so much of the work has to happen all by myself. You gotta figure all this stuff out, and then take it in, and then play with the other people and see what they're bringing, and hoping that there's nothing that's like completely conflicting, and try to be in the moment and try to respond to what they're giving you, but also ignore the guy with the mic who's like 2 feet away from you. And it's such a weird balance, I find, acting, of like responding to what's actually happening in the moment, but also completely ignoring other things. No wonder so many of us are crazy.
Yeah.
Ryan, any thoughts on how crazy
Actually,
Emily is?
yes, I do.
He's like, you took the words out of my mouth.
Would you say that theater is what most actors want to be doing, but it just isn't as lucrative, or it's just
Oh
a
no,
blend?
I know plenty of actors who have no desire to do theater, either because, well, for example, this is an example of someone who doesn't want to doing it, but I have never done a run of anything longer than maybe like 4 months, and while that means like constant job insecurity, that's also really interesting to me, and I like the variety of roles that I get to play. My fiance has been doing the same show since we met 3 years ago.
Whoa.
And it was the first out-of-town tryout that they did. It's a musical that's on Broadway called Come From Away. And they did an out-of-town tryout in La Jolla, and then they did Seattle, and then they had 6 months off, and then they did DC and Toronto, and then they opened on Broadway a little over a year ago. And it's wildly successful. And as, 8 times a week performances go, it's a good one to be in because it's a very ensemble show, and, everyone shares the load, and it's an interesting show. But I look at that, and I could not imagine doing the same thing for 3 years.
But then you look at series regulars, and they're on shows sometimes for 7 to 10 years in Vancouver. So, or not here a lot of times. And that also has equally challenging. It's like the best case scenario. Sometimes you really have to think about what you want to do and try to shape the career you want, because the world can just take you, and even the best case can be not the life you envisioned. So I like that you've kind of maintained, that's why I wanted you here, because you've really maintained a good balance between the theater and the TV, and knowing, kind of balancing those two things. So you're getting your creative outlet, you're getting that community feel of the theater, because it is true. A lot of times, especially when you're a guest star, you show up and you're the last thing that's thought of. They just want you to show up, do your part, and leave.
Yeah.
And theater, it's not like that. Every second of the day, you're collaborating with your castmates. And so I wanted to talk about one of the most interesting projects, I think, or what I'm most fascinated by, was your project with Mark Rylance. I'm doing original works. If you want to talk a little bit more about that.
It was nuts. It was so fun.
It was at the Guthrie, right?
It was at the Guthrie, yeah, which is a theater that I've worked at a few times and is, I would say, like one of my theater homes. It's a really wonderful community in Minneapolis, or I should say the Twin Cities, I guess. We don't want to exclude St. Paul.
Okay.
But yeah, there are a lot of actors there who make a living as theater actors. But there's also a good amount of film and TV and commercials that get done there. But yeah, this was
What
one
was
of
the
those.
name of it?
It was called Nice Fish,
Nice Fish.
and it was a
I was gonna
play
say
that
Big
he
Fish,
had
so
written.
good thing you said that.
Well, there's also a show called Big Fish.
That's why I was
There's a
listening.
movie called Big Fish.
I think the show. There's
The
a
show is
musical
based
based on the movie. I think.
Yeah,
And
I think there
there's
is a musical.
There's a band called Real Big Fish, right?
Okay, so there's a lot of fish out there,
There's
but
a
this is
card
Nice
game
Fish.
called Go Fish.
That's true.
I don't know
That's
if you
right,
guys have heard
yeah.
of that one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
I like to eat tuna fish.
So Nice Fish with Mark Rylance.
Yeah, so this was a play that he had written with Louis Jenkins, who's I was about to say playwright, but he wasn't a playwright before this, poet. And Mark had used, Mark, who has won numerous awards, including Tony's, had used Mark's, Louis's, he writes like prose poetry. He'd used those in his acceptance speeches for the Tonys without knowing Louis.
Wow. Aren't you supposed to get permission for that?
No, it's just an acceptance speech.
Yeah.
Louis knew of him because Mark had grown up in Minneapolis. He lived there for some part of his early life, and so Louis knew Mark's acting career. I don't want to get too much into and then this person, and then this happened. Anyway, they wanted to collaborate on this play that was mostly based on Louis's prose poetry. And when I found out they were doing it and that there was a character who was perhaps my age, I was like, yeah, of course I want to be in that. So but it was the weirdest script because it's really weird, spacey poetry, and I knew enough about Mark to know that, like, I didn't really care what it was. It would just be awesome to work with him. But I remember, like, working on I had to put myself on tape, and I was here at the time. I used to go back and forth between New York and LA a lot more. And I remember putting myself on tape here because I wasn't in New York. And the friend that I was working on it with was like,
What is
I don't even know what to tell you. I don't know if you're good or not, because I don't know what this is. Because I was a Norse goddess who was living on a frozen lake in a sauna hut, like you do.
Typecasting.
Exactly.
Haven't you also played a mermaid?
Yes, I was a mermaid as well on a Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, so clearly there's a theme. Norse god, mermaids.
I'm a goddess. So we got there, and it's the most wonderfully playful, collaborative process I've ever had that also felt so free from pressure. And when I say that, so Mark co-wrote it. He co-directed it with his wife, Claire, who is nominated for a Tony this season for her own writing.
Claire Danes.
No.
Yeah.
It's the only Claire.
Totally, yeah.
It's LA here. Can you tell us Claire who? What's her last name?
Claire Van Kampen.
There we go.
Who
Shout
started
out.
as a composer, but who knew, a brilliant playwright and wonderful director. And Mark was also in it. And I sort of went into this rehearsal process knowing that even though, I think Mark is genius, I was like, this sort of sounds like a recipe for disaster, because he's co-written it, co-directing it. He's going to be in it. That often doesn't, we can look at a lot of these
Ben
passion
Affleck
projects
should only
for
be a
people.
director. Let me just say, certain people stick better to one
I was
category.
involved in something like that. I'm not going to name names, but it was a project about 10 or 12 years ago where the person had never written anything before, and he was like the best friend of a famous actor who was going to be in the thing, and they made it, and it was like a total, it was what you would expect from that kind of, I guess, self-interested passion project. I'm not saying Mark Rylance is self-interested, but it was one of those things where this is not going to work.
Yeah,
it didn't
it's
work.
understandable
Yeah.
that you had apprehensions about this idea, but it sounds like it.
Well, and I say, I feel okay saying I had apprehensions because it was so the opposite of that. Because Mark is just one of the most generous, humble, kind, playful actors. And even though it was very often in theater, you just feel like you don't have enough time. Like the play that I'm doing right now, we're doing Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, and it's cut, so it's a shorter evening, but still we have 4 weeks to do 2 plays, essentially.
Right.
And so very often you get into rehearsal for a play, and it's like, all right, we got to stage it. Let's go. It's about, product. And then you, fill it in. And Mark was just so, because of his own experience as an actor and what has worked for him, we did so much improvisation. We played so much. There were parts of the play that we never set that were different every single night.
That's great.
And it was just so much fun. And it was another chance to just risk. I remember I had to make a toast every night. And my goal was always to surprise my castmates and make them laugh because they were very, very, very funny people. And I decided that my character would have pulled together the idea, because remember, she's a Norse goddess. She doesn't really have much experience with people. And she would sort of pull together lines that she really liked from nursery rhymes or limericks or really either stupid or basic or the national anthem, things that didn't really fit. And it was always wonderfully satisfying on the nights when I could surprise my castmates and actually, because they knew it was going to be different every night. They didn't know what it would be, but when it was something that actually delighted them and I saw the twinkle in their eyes, I was like, yes. And then there were the nights where I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And I saw the disappointment. Really?
But
This
isn't
is
that the
what you
beauty
have
of
for us?
theater
You
too?
quoted
That
Beowulf?
yeah, Beowulf. Oh my God, please. But this idea that failure, I believe that's what they taught us in grad school. That's what I learned anyway, is that this idea, this concept, you have to be okay to fail because that's where the genius lies.
Yeah.
And if you are not willing to fail, you're not taking risks. And that's, in theater, you really can take those risks. And then you get to have that sparkle in your castmates' eyes. Whereas film and TV, there's a lot more production around it and so many more, domino effect. If you change this, then it changes that. And there's,
and
it's
your
very
best
different.
take might be on a take where somebody
other
made
person.
a weird noise
Right.
and they can't use it. And then just the idea that it's once they decide what take they're going to use and they edit it together, that's it. You don't get another chance.
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump to TV. And
But before we do, can I ask a layperson question? So I'm not an actor at all. You guys
really,
are.
Daniel?
Well, in the bedroom.
Too much.
Back to boobs.
I put on my wizard robe. I, for a long time, had a recurring nightmare that I was in a play on stage and I had never read the script. And had to go on stage and had to be like, what is this play? Oh, it's about Abraham Lincoln? All right, let me improvise here. And I had just recurring nightmare. I've never done theater in my life. I've never acted. I've never wanted to act, but I kept having that nightmare. So now this story is actually just about me, so I'm hijacking the interview.
Now it's your therapy session.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me tell you guys. My friend Kate, she's like, well, you should take an acting class. And I was like, all right.
Because you're in LA and everybody.
Yeah, she's like,
has.
get over that fear or whatever. And so I did. And so it was like a working professionals acting class, which I didn't belong in, but I've written and directed several short films, so I kind of weaseled my way in. And the first assignment was to tell a story. And I was like, well, I'm going to be clever here. I'm going to take A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash, and I'm going to turn it into my story, and I'm going to tell it as a story. But you guys probably know this. People who prepare for scene study classes, they prepare for months sometimes, right? I mean, at least in this class they did. It was like a scene study class. And I started preparing 3 hours before.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was so embarrassing. And I did it, and it sucked, and I forgot my lines, right? So
Your nightmare
came true. But here's the rest of the story, and then I'll ask my question off of this story. So then the teacher was actually like, he's like, do you really want to be in this class? I was like, I don't know. But then he assigned me something else, and I worked on it for like 2 or 3 months with my co-star. Wow. Or whatever. And we did it, and everyone was like, oh my God, that was really good. I was like, yes. They're like, I can't believe you've never acted before. I was like, I don't know what to say. And then I quit the class, and I never went back.
But you haven't had that nightmare again.
I still have the nightmare.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still have that nightmare.
Do you really?
But that makes more sense.
This is what I'm asking. Do you get nervous?
It's so boring. I'm like, why do I have to have such an
I get the
obvious
naked
anxiety dream?
I get the naked one where I'm on stage naked and everyone's
wow.
laughing. That's mine. But yeah, it's a little more degrading forgetting lines.
But my question for both of you guys is, do you ever, before you go on stage, think, oh my God, this could be a disaster? Or do you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you do.
Especially opening night or previews, right? I mean, when did you go into previews for Henry IV?
We have 3 previews. We preview the 5th, 6th, and 7th of June.
Okay. Coming up, guys. You can buy your tickets.
With Tom Hanks, right?
With Tom Hanks, yeah.
And so he's never done stage before, has he?
He has.
Yes.
Oh, he has.
He worked with, and I didn't know this till we got to rehearsal. His first professional job was doing Taming of the Shrew at, I don't remember where, but then he worked with our director, Dan Sullivan, at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival, also doing Taming of the Shrew, like his next run of Taming of the Shrew. And he actually told us this story at the beginning of rehearsal. He said he's this, like, I guess he was in undergrad, and it was one of those summer theater gigs, and it was, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you'll be shocked to know that summer theater often involves a lot of drinking and partying and, showing up for rehearsal hungover. And so Tom said that, like, everyone showed up for rehearsal, like, really, bleary-eyed and hungover, and they have their scripts, and they're kind of shuffling through, and Dan was getting frustrated, and he just said, guys, you gotta have an idea. And it was like that simple. And Tom said that like, he was like, oh yeah, like you have to bring something.
Right.
Right.
And that changed his career kind of, or?
Let's say yeah.
Okay.
He got bosom buddies the next day.
I mean.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it is, I mean, I feel like that piggybacks off of the, like, being willing to fail, because so often in an attempt to be, like, safe and not make fools of ourselves, we might try for something that's very clever, as you said, or, this idea that, like, we see how it's going to play out.
Right.
And that often backfires. And I have found, and this was also something that I learned from working with Mark, is that, because I think he's a genius, but I saw from working with him that he also just works really diligently and really hard. Like, yes, he is touched by the muses, but he also, like, does, the same work for every script, and so we all got to do that as a cast, and it's very craftsman-like. It's very methodical, and like you prepared for a few months, and then you had this brilliant scene. Does that always happen? No, but I do feel like that's sort of the baseline.
Hard work does pay off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It may not give you the exact
have
result.
The freedom. What is it? Who was that guy? Henry Ford said like genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration.
Exactly.
And I keep wishing that were different.
I know.
Yeah. It's hard work. So this idea of transferring or doing both, theater and TV, did a job bring you out to LA, or did you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to try this TV thing, or did it naturally happen for you?
It was sort of a combination of things. I did, to go back to a previous question, I did realize that theater does not pay that phenomenally, especially because once you're done with a play, like you don't get paid anymore. Whereas when you do television,
unless you collect unemployment.
Right.
Which a lot of theater actors out there do, guys.
This play's over.
not
Now I
just-
make the real bucks.
Yeah. It's not
And
just
then
welfare
you do your,
people.
like under the table, like catering and babysitting
Right.
and all that. Not that I know anyone who's ever done under the table work.
No, never.
But so part of it was financial, part of it was just curiosity. I was like, oh, okay, well, I want to see what it's all about. And then part of it again was like being willing to do the work and then having some nice things line up, because I never thought that I would want to live in LA, and most of the TV opportunities I got at first required me to come out here either for an audition or for a short guest star thing or something. And so I learned how much I actually do like it. But my first TV work was on Guiding Light.
Right, soaps.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, which is so absurd, so weird. Talk about having to do something really fast and having no time to rehearse or prep or anything.
No.
I don't watch soaps, but do the directors encourage you to be melodramatic? Is that part of the gig, or?
I can't
'Cause I
speak
feel
for
like
all
the-
directors. I think it's just that the stakes are so high all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like someone's dying and someone else has a baby.
Yeah.
And oh my God, the baby is now my husband.
And my grandfather came back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not really time for subtle introspection.
Right.
That's not typical, but a lot of actresses find that transition easier from, theater to soap, and then from soap to TV. It's kind of like, it is more theatrical in a way. And then now you're in the medium of television and you can tone it down for everything else.
Yeah.
Tends to be a good segue, I guess. But did you find that was hard, having that on your resume? And did you ever find that having lots of theater and having Guiding Light, did that help you, or do you think there was did you ever get pushback of like, oh, you're a theater actress? Like, did that ever hurt you?
It really depends on the casting directors. There's some people I find who love working with theater people. The first series regular gig that I got, Monday mornings that you were talking about, I landed that when I did like the cardinal sin of pilot season, and I went to the Guthrie to do a play.
During pilot season?
Yeah.
Oh, what a rebel.
I know. But it was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. and
Oh,
I'd gone through
Maggie,
this-
come on, dream
Yeah.
role.
And like I hadn't, I had, there's like a certain amount of balancing you try to do for, okay, I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to keep trying to get like, I'm not going to go away and do a play, yada, yada, yada. And at this point, like my soul was just like, please.
Give me theater.
And so I went away to do it, and I put myself on tape for Monday mornings, and Bill D'Elia, who was directing it, and David E. Kelly, who wrote it, both love theater actors. They really respect theater actors. So that was actually a bonus that like
You were doing a
I
show.
was away doing this incredible play. But then it's bizarre the things you do get pushback on. Like I still, because I don't have a lot of comedy on my reel. Like I've done Flight of the Conchords, I've done some single cam, I've done I think one sitcom now, guest star. But I've tested for a lot of comedies. But because I don't have a lot on my reel, people are like, oh, well, she's not funny at all, so we don't want to see her. And so I'm continually having to like self-tape for comedies. And then most of the time it works out, and they're like, oh, yeah, okay, you're not completely dull. And so they'll let me come in. But then sometimes it doesn't. And I'm like,
So
wait, but no,
frustrating.
but I am. I just, ugh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, speaking of this is not comedy, but the title of your ongoing cabaret that you do, Jack and Swallow. That's funny. Okay,
What?
people.
Why is that funny?
I don't know. It's just your last
Gotta
names,
ask.
but
What are you talking about?
but I saw that and it was phenomenal. Like I
Thank
had
you.
so much fun in that cabaret, and also I feel like it's talking about doing a play while pilot season, cardinal sin, this and that. You have to be happy in your life. So if you bring joy into an audition, or you're happy with what you're doing, you're working on Jack and Swallow, and you have to run off, you're fulfilled in a way that the casting director and anyone else watching can sense that. And that's really what it's about, is finding the balance that makes you happy, because happiness is going to shine through in your audition. If you're going there starving and hungry and be like, I need this job because I said no to all these amazing plays to be in this stupid TV show and it's not even going to cast me, that's not going to get you cast, you know?
No.
So I think that's something that's really important for any young actors out there. Emily Swallow, I think, would vouch for being happy and doing what makes you happy in this business.
Well, and I think the other part of that is that when you're doing things elsewhere in your life, or within the creative field, that I feel like creativity is a muscle that has to be worked. And Daniel, you're talking about rehearsing for 2 months for that scene, and so
Right.
then when it was time to perform it, I would venture to guess that you didn't have to try so hard to pull the creativity from somewhere. It was there.
Yeah.
You'd
Can
been
I
doing
say?
your...
Can I comment on that? Because it was weird. I've never done that before, and I'd never memorized lines. I've never memorized a performance, and my big anxiety was when you're not performing.
You're not prepared.
I would think oh, am I going to be able to do it? But when you're in the moment, it just happens.
Because you did the work, though.
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying. You kind of internalize it, and I was really surprised by that, because going into that scene, which wasn't just brilliant, it was the greatest scene.
Oh my
What?
God.
Can you tell us what it was from?
it was pretty bad.
Were you Blanche in Streetcar?
Yeah, oh my God.
No, he was Blanche from Golden Girls.
Actually, I was Dorothy. No, it was called Crossing.
Crossing the border.
No, it's
Crossing Jordan.
it's man, what was it called? It's a Jewish play.
He's a Jew,
Crossing
guys.
Delancey?
Crossing Delancey,
Yeah.
because
I'm not even Jewish.
yeah,
This is Daniel Patinkin, Mandy Patinkin's cousin over here.
Mandy Patinkin is the ultimate Jewish performer. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yes, we know.
But he did
yes.
a Broadway tour in Yiddish. My dad's Jewish and my mom's Irish Catholic, so I wasn't even raised Jewish. But the acting instructor was like, Patinkin, all right, you're doing Crossing Delancey. There's going to be a Jewish lady who's a matchmaker. She's
You
gonna
played the
say-
Jewish lady?
Exactly.
Oh
Her
my
name-
God.
Blanche. No, I played the guy that fell in love with the girl, but I digress. But back to your point, yeah, I think the hard work internalizes it, and that's what really surprised me when I did this little performance. Is I was like, when it was over, I was like, how did I do that? It
There are
was in
very
my
few
brain.
or actors in general that I think really just show up hungover and book jobs and are famous. That's not really the case. You ask so many successful actors their journey and their struggle. I don't know very many that just hit it big.
Right.
Even ones that are related to famous people. And we know there's a lot of nepotism in this business, and those people still have to work.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it is, again, going back to the creative gym and what you were saying, Natalie, I find that if I'm working on something that has all those juices already bubbling and stuff, then if I do get an audition, even if it is something that's oh my gosh, this is so big and exciting, I'm not showing up trying to pull something out of the ether. All of that stuff is already going. You don't go to the gym once every 2 months and expect to bench press
250.
yeah.
I hope this-
Good
Natalie
number.
and I both
Nice
I mean,
number.
I'm 275, Emily,
Are we
but
talking grams or pounds?
pounds.
potato chips.
Emily, what I've noticed about your acting, at least on TV, which is where I've seen you, is you are super nonchalant. No, what I mean is you're so laid back. You're almost hyper naturalistic in your acting. Has anyone ever told this to you? Because
No.
I mean, that's what I was.
That's a very good compliment.
This past weekend is you're just so cool. It's you don't care, but I mean in a good way.
Okay, I was
you're
like,
no.
But then the audience comes to
Clearly,
you,
you
right?
didn't care. Yeah, no, I was like, I was analyzing your performance this weekend.
What'd you watch?
I went to the 4-foot
Cleavage
website. No, I was watching The Mentalist. I was watching Supernatural, and there's something about your performance that is just so. I guess the word is natural. That I was thinking, man, she just must do a lot of preparation to be this comfortable in that role. Maybe you don't. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Supernatural, and definitely that was one where, I mean, that show was so much fun because I've never gotten to do anything on TV that's not just like, I'm a doctor, I'm a police officer,
Right. I'm Lisa.
I'm Lisa.
For the third time this month.
And the stakes on that show are huge, but actually because, and for those of you who don't know, on Supernatural, I played the Darkness, who is God's sister, which should explain so much. I just love being able to say that.
Yeah.
You're like, what'd you do on that show? The Darkness. But getting ready to play like a supernatural being, there's no amount of prep you can do that will make you feel like you are. I mean, well, let's be honest. There's some people whose egos will do that. Not for me. And so I kind of felt with that character, like less is more because she was killing people left and right. And, and it was really fun to explore that because I am not naturally still. And so I did have to do a lot of prep to like get myself like not to want to like react really big to things.
Right.
And that was fun. That was fun to get to
ground
try that on.
You know, back to NYU. Do you remember the exercise Calder made us do where we had to be like a tree trunk? This is like my pivotal moment in graduate. I know this sounds really crazy to anyone out there who's never taken an acting class.
And all those people who were like, "Oh, what did you? My brother actually asked me once when I was at NYU. He's what, "Were you like a tree today?"
No,
like,
but
totally
this happens.
mocking it, and I was like, "Yeah."
No, because we learned about how characters are like
Excellent.
energy, like fire, water, air. That was part of the lesson, and then it was also these like tree. So anyway, this exercise I remember where this might have been helpful had you remembered, but I guess not. Where you literally have to pretend you're grounded, so grounded that you're a tree with roots, and then someone else has to try to pull you. You're like have to hold on to like a blue mat, like in a gym class, and then everyone else has to try to pull you off, and you're like, I'm staying here, and then you keep saying I'm staying here like over and over. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, that kind of work I think would help with that severely grounded. I'm a goddess.
Well, and really feeling it as opposed to trying to show it, because we've all seen that where somebody is trying to show like they're
huge.
Yeah, and you're.
I think that's what I mean. I think that in your acting, you play it well because you're so subtle and laid back in your delivery that it seems like you're just in your skin. And
she is that person.
You're not overperforming.
Well, even the way you talk about your character, you say she was this, she was. It's like another person. You become these other people, and I think transcendental acting is really the goal, whether it is theater or film. And I think there are challenges and positives to both mediums. But, which medium do you feel most comfortable in? Or at this point, do you feel equally comfortable?
I still feel most comfortable with theater because I still, even though like the approach to the character in both of them is the same for me. I start with the same questions. I start with the same exploration, and I have to explore before I get to rehearsal, before I get to set. I have to explore physically and vocally and all these things. And so the preparation is the same, but there's still something about, I still feel kind of confined with television because, part of it is that you just don't have as long a stretch of just going. Like you do a scene that's, a few minutes
it's like
long.
a sprint.
Yeah, and you're like trying to be consistent about like when did I pick up the mug and when did I put it down. You're juggling so many things that have nothing to do with the performance. They're very technical, and the more you can, I do try to think about all those things as being more about the performance and not as technical, but that's a lot to be happening in this brain. And
it is a lot.
Sometimes it just doesn't compute.
What about film? Do you have ambitions in doing more film? Or
I would like to do more. I've mostly done short films. There's one that I did that we just found out is going to premiere at the MARFA Film Festival.
Cool.
You play a mom in that, don't you?
Yeah, it's this beautiful short. It's only 15 minutes long, and I was really impressed with it.
What's it called?
It's called Forget Me Not, and the team that wrote it are sisters, Flo and Kim Nuesh, They're from Switzerland, and it's loosely based on their own mother, who was bipolar, and them as kids. And it sounds like something that could be like, so sentimental and schlocky. But I just think that part of their brilliance is that they were able, even though this is something that's very close to them and very personal, like the images that they chose to use and the moments that they chose to use in this little 15-minute film are really lovely and interesting, and it was a joy to work on it and to talk to them about their own mom, and like I love getting to hear people's stories about why they've created what they've created.
And is there any way anyone listening can watch that, or we would have to go to a film festival?
At some point, I guess. I mean, this is the premiere at this film festival, so I guess as we see like what happens with
festival tour and everything.
I still understand so little about how all that works.
How would a short film come your way? Does it come through an agent or?
This one did, yeah. Sometimes it's friends. I mean, especially with the NYU community, I find out about people working on things, people needing actors, and sometimes it's through friends. And this one was an audition. Yeah. An audition actually where I wound up, there was like a snack basket in the audition room.
Go on.
And I think you're going to
We're all hungry. It's 1 o'clock.
I mean, talking about moments of lunacy, I don't really know. In this audition scene, it was a dinner scene, and one of my kids was like super, super mad. I don't even remember what I'd done. I mean, kids, right? But I was supposed to be like charming her, and I was telling her she could order whatever she wanted for dinner, and I was supposed to be like, trying to get her out of her funk. And I knew that I had done, the background work preparing for this, and knew that the woman was bipolar, and knew from what the sisters had said that in addition to having these like deep dark lows, like she was like a circus performer sometimes. Like that was the upside of that. And so there was this moment in the audition when I'm doing the scene, and then I look over at the snack basket, and I just decided this was the moment to grab a few bags of popcorn, and I opened them and I like threw them all over the room. Which could have, in another audition room, it might have really pissed him off.
Right.
Because it was messy.
Yeah.
And it was so satisfying that it was so messy. And it wound up like
Booking you the
delighting
job.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I just try
stories.
to bring food to every audition, and I throw it at people.
Mary Louise Parker talks about that. Every audition she did for television, she would bring a yogurt and like be eating yogurt in her auditions.
Well,
that was her thing.
Well, really?
I auditioned a guy for a short film. He was going to play the lead, and this guy he came in, and you're like, he acted like the biggest hotshot ever. It actually didn't work because he came in and he sat and he crossed his leg, and he had a Starbucks
a hoagie.
cup,
oh,
and he was
just went down on a hoagie, just right there in the audition.
And he had a wizard hat on, and he was just sipping his Starbucks, and like he's like, I just got back from Vegas. I don't know if he thought that's what we wanted.
I don't think he was thinking,
or if that's really what he was. But it didn't.
See, it
work.
can fail. It can fail.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Dan's brought up wizards twice, and you brought up hoagies twice.
I'm hungry. Okay.
Hoagie wizard.
Popcorn, snacks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So, in terms of the way theater, the mantra of theater, do you think that works for Jack and Swallow because everyone shares the load?
Oh my God, that's
my
so
God.
bad. You did not say that.
Where's the edit button?
I love this because part of the reason.
Load.
I mean, look, my last name is really my last name. Like people have asked
Are you going
me.
to change your last name when you get married?
No, you've made it
Not
this far.
professionally.
Okay.
At least that's true for one of us here.
Yes.
Using them.
My last name's Doolittle, so we've
Yeah,
both had some.
you got stuff. Yeah.
Are you going to do Jack and Swallow again, though?
I hope
In
so.
all honesty?
Jack actually was supposed to give birth yesterday. She hasn't yet. She's due.
Okay.
But yeah, we want to do it again. She's in New York.
Yeah. Bring it here to LA.
Well, she's got 2 children that are very.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Just bring them along. But part of the reason it was so satisfying to name that show that is because all my life I've gotten shit for my name.
Yeah.
And, people are like, oh, people must have said so much when you were younger. And I'm like, when I was younger, what are you talking about? I actually had a casting director once in New York.
You mean last week?
Yeah. I had a casting director take me aside after this audition, and it was a casting director that I had been in for several times. And, so I knew he knew what my name was, knew it had been my name for forever. And he pulled me aside and he was like, I don't know if you've ever thought about, like, how people might view your name and if you've ever considered changing it. And I just looked at him and I said, what? No, what do you mean?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
But Jack's name is Jacqueline. And she and I met doing a workshop of a musical called Oneida that was about the Oneida colony, who, I don't know if you know, they were one of the first religious and free love movements in the United States. They're also well known for their spoons. They make flatware.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, we were disappointed that there wasn't a romantic song called Spooning.
Oh, you should do that in your next cabaret.
Mm-hmm. So Jack and I met doing that. We kept cracking each other up and getting in trouble. And then one of our mutual friends, Adam Lebowitz, who you know, he was like, you guys are so dumb. You should go get an act or something. And he was like, actually, you should do a cabaret act. And so he produced it for us. And we were trying to decide on the name. I don't remember who suggested Jack and Swallow at first, but it was so satisfying to me to finally be like, yes, that is what it's called.
I'm going to own this.
Yeah. And there is something liberating about that.
My maiden name is Cock, so I didn't really like to own that.
That's right.
Is it really?
That's just too much.
Yeah.
Just too much.
Wow.
Well, it's Kauk, K-A-U-K,
Yeah.
Okay.
but everybody says Cock. And so I was Little Cock in high school, and my little sister, no, I was Big Cock. My little sister was Little Cock.
Yeah.
So it was just real on the nose. Like,
Yeah.
to Swallow, you could get away with it not being dirty. Like, you make them feel dirty for thinking something bad, but Cock, you really just
man.
can't get away from that.
Yeah.
You know?
Unless you're talking about Home Improvement and you're like
Cocking.
I
That's
mean,
true. See?
I said
Where's
cock.
everyone's mind out?
Yeah, my mind goes straight to the construction.
Yeah.
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 It makes me think about my bathroom tiles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so you're doing Henry IV, and what else is coming up in television or film?
You tell me.
Well,
Casting directors out there, she's available for
No,
more
I
work.
think this summer I do voiceover as well, and I have been doing a voice for a Netflix series called Castlevania, and I think our second season of that, I recorded it long ago, but I think it's being released this summer on Netflix.
Isn't that so weird about TV and stuff? You do a job and you're like, oh my God, 2 years later, it
Yeah.
pops up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
and people ask you things about it, and you're like, I remember. I
Yeah.
don't know.
You can roll with I just did this for 2 years. In this business.
Yeah.
Not with theater. You have to be in real time with that.
And even
But-
then, it usually doesn't exist for people. If they're
No.
not there, when I go home to Jacksonville and all the very lovely, loving, well-meaning people at church, they know all about, they still ask me about NCIS and Mark Harmon that I did, I don't know, 8 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm doing a play. And they're like, huh? What?
Yeah. Henry,
If
what?
they can't see it, it doesn't exist. Although, getting to say that I'm in a play with Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, that
pretty
puts it
awesome.
on the
makes
map.
it all so much easier.
Yeah.
That legitimizes
Isn't it
for
so
people.
true? Oh my God. If the Hanks is in it,
Yeah,
it's
I wonder
real.
if your parents probably too, you're gonna play with Tom Hanks, everything worked out. You're
Yeah,
doing
right.
great.
You're
Like,
finally validated.
Yeah.
to your parents.
My parents have always been supportive, but my brother definitely, he feels better when he knows someone else that I'm working with. And
Right,
he's like,
right.
okay, you're okay, sis. It's all, he just is.
it's his wonderful personality that makes him like that.
He's a
charismatic.
He's a
Yeah.
janitor.
He's a
by the way.
businessman.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in his
Look,
head.
I have a lawyer and a doctor as siblings. I know what it is to be like,
Yeah.
I swear I'm alive. I'm fine.
He's very supportive. He just wants me to be taken care of.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I'm getting married in the fall. So
Woo!
that's also
Woo!
why I'm
Congrats.
not putting myself out for every possible job. Although
Wow.
I'll probably get the role of a lifetime that requires
The week
me
of
to
your
be
wedding.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
It's going to be shooting probably in I don't know.
Uzbekistan.
Exactly.
Yep.
What do
We're
you
going to
do?
Uzbek.
Do you cancel the?
That's on everybody. Personally.
Yeah, if you got the role of a lifetime, would you move the wedding? You'd probably have to, right?
I mean, if
Yeah.
it were something, here's where it's convenient that my fiance is also an actor.
Oh,
I can't imagine anything that would produce that kind of a conflict, or I'd have to. If it happened, though,
Yeah.
I mean, we would consider it. The thing that's been weird for me about planning a wedding is that I have I've missed so many weddings of loved ones because of work, and there's just
So now they're
like,
not coming to yours.
Yeah.
Well, no, I have to recognize, like, there's a lot of people who I'm inviting for whom a wedding, like, is a very, like, I'm sort of casual about it. I'm like, oh, if you can make it, cool, and if not, it's okay.
Yeah.
But and it's not that it's not sacred to me. It's just that, like, my career has required me, or not required, but asked me to, like, do a lot of inconvenient things, and it's all worked out okay. Like,
Right.
I used to, like, not ever plan for anything because I was like, oh, it's gonna have to change, but then that gets really tiring.
Yeah.
So now I make plans knowing that I might have to move them,
As is life.
and that's okay. Yeah,
Where are you going to get married? On the East Coast, West Coast?
up in Seattle.
Oh,
That's where
is
my
he from
fiance
there?
grew up. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Are you going to go in the Space Needle? Is that what it's called? Space Needle?
We're getting married on the tip of the space.
Oh my God.
And then we're going to jump off.
Yeah, this is gonna be great.
Well, what should Ryan wear? That's my question.
Yeah, I've been wondering
tuxedo
that since you
optional?
brought
Something
it up.
that shows off really good cleavage.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
4 foot.
4 foot cleavage,
4 foot
preferably.
cleavage. Or if I have just the thing.
Good.
Is it going to be on like an island? Like,
Yeah, his grandparents built a house on Vashon Island, which is one of the islands out in the Puget
Wow.
Sound. That's been in the family for.
I don't know how I knew that. I just had a sense
many,
you were going to get
many
married on an
That
island.
was impressive.
That was
Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
I don't even think of islands in Seattle, but
Yeah. I think of the San Juan Islands normally when I think of islands off
Similar
Seattle.
to that,
but yeah.
yeah.
Bainbridge, is that one?
It is, yeah.
impressive. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a productive
Yeah.
and enlightening conversation. I think we've learned a lot. What can we recap?
I think we should end it with Emily giving advice to any.
Oh, God.
Yes. Gonna have to do this because, would you, for a young actress out there who's maybe in high school and wants to be an actress, what would be your biggest piece of advice for getting into this business? I know, daunting. I want to hear it myself,
Well-
and I'm in my 30s, so
I'm asking for a friend.
perfect.
I do think because there's no one way in. So it's definitely understanding that and understanding that it never, like, it gets easier in some ways, but it's always really, really challenging. And so you just kind of have to be prepared for that and to know what you love within it and stay connected to that. And like you were saying, Natalie, like, make sure that you have other things. Like, for a really long time, I love what I do so much, and when I'm doing it, it like checks all the boxes of like what makes me happy. But I just can't depend on it to always be around in that way.
Right.
And so being willing to like put that time into other things in my life,
Like surf riders. We
like
could
Surf
end with
Rider,
that,
yeah,
your hobby.
yeah. I do a lot of volunteer work with Surf Rider, which is an environmental nonprofit,
Yeah.
and that's really, it makes me happy because that's why I live at the beach here in LA. Like I need to be close to the ocean and
What
connected
beach?
to that. I live in Venice.
Oh, okay. I used to live in Venice. I lived in Venice
Oh.
for 6 years, and then I moved to New York for about 2 years, and I came back, and they increased my rent like 50%.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
I'm heading to MAR Vista. Anyway,
So yeah, if anyone wants to get involved in surf riders, is there a website people can
Go to la.surfrider.org.
Awesome. And then if you want to see Emily in her current production of Henry IV, you can buy tickets for that. Just Google Henry IV, Daniel
At the Japanese
Sullivan at the
Garden.
Japanese
forget
Garden.
all that. Just put Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
Tom
Yeah.
Hanks.
Yeah.
Henry
I mean,
IV.
let's cut to the
You will get
chase.
tickets. It's only 12 performances, is that right?
No,
A
it's
short run.
I think
Oh.
it's 28.
Oh, I've just inverted that. But yeah, it's a shorter run.
Math is hard.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
really, clearly did not go to school for math.
I went to school to become a tree trunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
And say, I'm staying here. So shout out. Thank you so much, Emily, for
Thank you,
coming.
Emily.
We really appreciate it. Yay, a little clap.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Standing
Ryan.
ovation
Thank
right
you,
here.
Ryan, for
Yeah,
joining us.
thanks,
Especially-
sidekick.
we-
Thanks for
especially
having
the inappropriate comments were
Yeah.
very welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome.